Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome back, Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. We're talking about juries today. We'll be telling you the difference between a trial by a judge or a bench trial and a jury trial. So let's go back and make that point again about why or why not you would want to settle things early or take it to trial.
Well, we're always trying to do what's in the best interest of the client. I think that should be our number one concern. And often that isn't a fight. So that's always my concern is what's going to get the client where they want to be and where they need to be.
Yeah, and sometimes we have to be candid with them about, what they may have already done that we didn't advise them to do. We have to help them stay out of trouble sometimes. Okay, well, let's talk about the differences between a bench trial and a jury trial. And you might have to talk a little bit about criminal versus civil, too. Both of you have been on both sides of those areas. Shannon, why don't you go first? What's the difference between a bench trial and a jury trial?
Oh, I hope you're not looking to fill a lot of time with me because it's just either to a jury or to the judge.
And so, but what's the difference in strategy?
Yeah, good point.
Big difference.
Yeah, well, go ahead.
No.
Sometimes if you have a judge and you aren't 100% sure what way they're going to go, if they're favorable to your client or not, or maybe you've got a judge that ran on a law and order, like if you're in a criminal trial and you've got a really tough, strict judge that has to have a certain record so they can keep running on that platform, you maybe would want to take it to a jury, because as we were talking about earlier, a jury is somewhat of a wild card, right? So you'd have to really be sure a judge was not going to go your way. You're really putting all of your eggs in one basket when you go in front of a judge. It's one person. But, if you've known that judge for a long time, they run with it, yeah.
Yeah. Judges are going to be a lot more predictable because you know their personality, you know how they're likely to rule on things. And if I'm going to go, okay, if I really like my case, if I really like my facts, if I think it lines up with the law, I want a bench trial. I want to go in front of the judge.
Okay.
Can
you explain why?
Yeah, because they're going to apply the law correctly. They're not going to get confused. Hopefully apply the law correctly. They're not going to get confused like a jury might, because jurors are not attorneys. Appeals to emotion aren't going to be as effective. And, with a jury, you do not know what they're going to decide is important. That's the wild card there is, in jury selection, we try really hard to learn as much about the jurors as we can. But at the end of the day, even if you think you kind of know somebody's personality, if they say, hey, in your trial, you didn't bring up that person signed that document on Saturday instead of Sunday. Well, I had no idea you would think it was important. It wasn't important to us. But, it.
And so how is a jury different between criminal and civil?
Can I ask something about
Yeah, go ahead.
Why would appeals to emotion not work with the judge as much? It's a human person.
True, but I think that while I think that they can work, I think that just to a lesser degree than on a jury. Because I think as attorneys, judges, attorneys, we're trained to think a certain way. And I think that sort of overrides some of that emotional reasoning.
Well,
more than a regular person.
I have a story. Back in the olden days, I was representing indigent criminal defendants. And I was assigned to this one young man. He took off all his clothes and jumped in the San Antonio River down at the Riverwalk. And that wasn't his biggest problem. His biggest problem was that he was a member of the armed forces. And so if he gets in trouble in court, he also gets in trouble back at the base.
Right.
And so he appealed to my emotional reaction to that, and I went to the prosecutor and tried to plea bargain his charge from a B to a C.
Sometimes that's all you can do.
And the prosecutor said, no way. And so I said, okay, no deal then. I'm just going to ask the judge to drop the charge. And he did.
Did you file a motion or just oral?
Shannon, I hardly knew what I was doing back then.
You were baby attorney?
Yeah.
But you had a very sympathetic client, I mean, a veteran.
Yeah.
And then it
Yeah.
kind of begs another question. Why was a veteran indigent? That's...
Oh, I don't know.
I mean, wait,
he was a young
active
man.
duty?
Yeah, active duty.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, that's if you're going to appeal to emotion, you better have a sympathetic client. Yeah, that's a good point.
Are you...
But I didn't know anything about the judge.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about knowing the judge.
Mm-hmm.
That could have been a big mistake.
Can we clarify? We don't mean knowing the judge, like, hey...
Oh, yeah.
Being
definitely.
familiar with.
Yeah, not like some kind of sneaky
Not
thing going on.
friendship or anything.
Just like you've been in front of this person before.
Right.
And, yeah.
You have data based on previous interactions.
Data. Thank you. Exactly. You have a reason to think they're going to be rational and reasonable. Is there any other details? Because that is fascinating. Was he having a mental health episode?
No,
or-
he was just intoxicated.
Wow. And was he okay? Because there's a mythology among natives that of San Antonio that if you ever were to touch the San Antonio River, you would die immediately. Like he'd lived.
He was okay, yeah.
Wow. Amazing. Myth dispelled.
I had not heard that one.
Oh
Right.
no!
So if-
but you're from here,
I'm
right?
from here, yeah.
But you should never take off your clothes in public because the criminal charge is pretty bad.
Really? But you were in misdemeanor court.
Well, it's, yeah.
Right, but it still could be considered a sex crime, and you have to
No.
report
The weirdest
to
things.
your neighbors.
Oh, my
and-
gosh.
The weirdest
Yeah.
things, all of a sudden people find themselves lifetime reporters. Like if somebody decided to use the bathroom in public and they thought they were being discreet. I think everybody's heard about those.
Well, if you haven't, don't use the restroom in public.
Yeah.
Well, but if you're unhoused, I mean, you don't have that option, and they won't.
Yeah.
They won't let you into places a lot of times.
They're in between a rock and a hard place, I guess.
Many rocks and hard places.
Well, that
Okay.
was a good story. Thank you.
Yeah, so let's move on to criminal jury versus a civil jury. Is it the same number of jurors?
A lot of it depends on the level of the crime. Misdemeanors are 6, felonies are 12. Our trial that we had a couple of weeks ago in a will contest was 6, and that was in a district court. But I think the biggest difference between juries in criminal and civil, they all come from the same pool of potential jurors. The biggest difference is how you do jury selection, how you do what we call voir dire. What kind of questions you ask them, what biases and prejudices you're looking to elicit.
Yeah, okay. Shannon, you've done a trial in both criminal side and the civil side. What do you think the differences might be?
Between criminal and civil?
Yeah.
Alex said it better. I don't really have a great answer. Can I ask how you connect with the jury? Do you do it one by one, or what's your method? What's your technique?
I mean, yeah, it's really hard. Don't try and be funny.
Yeah, I love
unless
it.
you're
Yeah.
really, really funny.
I love it. Did it go south on you? Is that?
Oh, yeah, that's how I learned. Yeah, it went wrong.
Do you remember? Tell us.
I don't remember exactly. I just remember going.
It's just you're traumatized to this.
Yeah. Late at night when I'm trying to go to sleep, I think about it. Yeah. But I think.
I love it.
Well, it's like what any stand-up comedian
Oh,
probably
God.
feels when you tell a joke and everybody just sits there.
It just bombs. No, thank
But
you.
they don't have that level of trauma. I mean, they
Oh,
get
yeah.
back up and do it again.
Yeah.
Well, right,
like he's
because
never going to do that
there's
again.
way more on the line when the attorney's
True.
in
True.
front of the
Yeah,
jury.
yeah, just not just my dignity.
Yeah.
But yeah, I try to connect with them. I think instead of trying to do it from the beginning in a broad swath, I just, as it goes, as people start responding to me, I'll talk to the people who respond to me and try and riff off of them to get other people that aren't talking to respond, because that's the most important thing, is to get people to talk.
I've seen that before. What do you think about what he said?
Yes.
Have you heard or ran into this? Can I ask a little something?
Yeah.
So this is a new concept for me. We're kind of living in a new world from when I was younger. Jurors are frightened. I had not known that until somebody clued me in, that they think that we have their information, because remember those jury sheets? They think, well, if they have it, then their client has it, and they can track me down, and I don't want to be on this. This I'm out. I'm scared. I don't want to have anything to do with this. You know what I mean?
Thought about that.
Yeah.
Well,
this is a thing, apparently.
When I was researching this, I read some of the history of jury trials. Well, back in year 1100 in England,
when I went to prom, I remember.
The jury was supposed to render...
I got Mark, he laughed.
The jury was supposed to render the verdict that the king wanted them to render. And sometimes they wouldn't. And so they would be punished.
That's a directed verdict. Sorry, lawyer.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame you can't use your humor. I bet you're so funny.
I'm married to a lawyer, so I get to sometimes at home.
Yeah.
No, that's wild.
So they had to change that because, you don't get very willing participants if they're afraid. You don't want them to be afraid.
Do you think he had him killed, or what do you think happened?
I mean...
What was the punishment?
Quartering.
Or the stocks.
Quartering. Well, but you brought up a good point about jurors being worried about us having all that information. Yeah, we do. We have these jury information cards. It has, your name, your age, does it have age on there? It has age, which is not something that you can use to exclude somebody, so I don't know why they include it.
Right.
Your profession.
Right.
They're all questions that the juror answered themselves.
Yes, but so everybody knows that the lawyers, the defendants, the parties, we are not allowed to retain any of that information. They collect it all when jury selection is over. And I have even had, sheriff's deputies and bailiffs go through my file to make sure I didn't have any.
Oh,
so,
really?
Yeah, they're serious about it.
But if your defendant is sitting next to you, if your client is sitting next to you and you're there and you've got it all right there, I mean, you know what I mean? We're in a new world.
Don't worry about it unless you're on a murder trial. Sorry.
Well, that's the level of, you're dealing with violent offenses if you're in a criminal court. I guess that answers your question, Todd. You're welcome.
Violent offenses. And another big difference between civil and criminal juries.
Yeah.
Criminal juries are a lot easier to keep entertained.
Really?
Well,
because of the nature of the
subject
case.
matter of the case is a lot more interesting, Oh, yeah. It's like people that watch,
true crime,
or people that watch, what are those TV shows where people are getting drunk and going wild? They get the real life version of what they say this guy did what?
But it can get super technical.
Oh, too. Absolutely. You start getting into breath tests, ballistics. Oh, you start getting into accident reconstruction. Trigonometry or calculus and, physics. Yeah, it can get really complicated.
Yeah, I'm sure it's difficult for jurors to understand everything, which is something that Kirk wanted me to ask about. Is a jury of my peers, are they really my peers nowadays?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know the answer to that.
I guess that depends on who's standing trial.
Well, are you going to tell your story too? Because that's a really good one.
I will after the break. I'll tell a story about when I had a jury trial.
Was there supposed to be someone else here?
Kirk was supposed to be here, but he's MIA, and that's okay because we have you guys to entertain us. But after the break, we're going to talk about opening versus closing. We'll talk about how much evidence you need to present to a jury. We'll talk about all the prep that goes into it, and we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the Ten Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.